What is your parenting style? You may be thinking, I didn't even know I had a parenting style. But the reality is you do. And there are many things that have influenced your style. It could have been the way you were parented or who you're parenting with, and many other variables in between. The power in understanding and the reason why we should know our own individual parenting style and maybe adjust it however we need to is because whatever our style is, it is directly impacting our child. It impacts their development, our relationship with them, and how they may parent in the future. So it is worth our time, our effort, our energy, and our attention to understand the various types of parenting styles and where we may need to adjust. Back in the 1960s, clinical and developmental psychologist Diana Baumrind talked about and she identified these three different parenting styles. And maybe you've heard them before: authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive. Then in the 1980s, an additional parenting style was added, which is neglectful. Now, you may have heard these terms, but one thing that I have consistently seen is people get confused by them. Sometimes they confuse authoritarian, authoritative. So I felt very motivated when I was writing my own parenting program to change those terms. They still have similar meanings, but I wanted to create terms that parents could identify with more closely and understand what they meant. So the three terms that I work with in parenting styles is dictator, pushover, and purposeful parent. Okay, I'm going to repeat those. We have the dictator parent, the purposeful parent, and the pushover parent. Three different styles. And it doesn't matter where you have been, what style, as we go into learning of these. This is not to make you feel guilty that you've parented a certain way. This is to educate and help you maybe adjust where you need to so you can parent the most effectively. Okay, let's imagine, if we could, a parenting spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum is an extreme way of parenting. And then on the other end of the spectrum is yet another extreme of parenting. This is where dictator is. And then over here, this is where the pushover parent is. But where we're going to end up being is in the middle. We're going to be more balanced. And that is the purposeful parent. So let's dive into the various ways we can parent, our different parenting styles. Okay, when you hear the term dictator over here on this end of the spectrum, this extreme style of parenting, who do you think of? Often when I'm giving this class live, I hear different participants giving different answers. Some of the answers I have heard is Hitler or Stalin. Yeah, those were dictators. And dictator parenting, the phrase that is closely associated with dictator parenting is a parent who would say something like, my way or the highway. I'm the big person, you're the little person, you're going to do what I say when I say. And they're very controlling. They demand obedience. They are strict. They have harsh consequences. That is a dictator parent. And it isn't productive. It ruins relationships and it impacts the child in very negative ways. So we want to identify if we're ever parenting there. And the good news is, if we have been parenting there, is we can change to make things more productive and to strengthen relationships. Okay, so if someone is being parented by a dictator, I want you to think of anyone you may know in your life, maybe a friend or family member, or maybe even you, who may have been parented by a dictator. That style of parenting that we need to pay attention to because we need to understand how it impacts the child. A likely outcome of a child who has been parented by a dictator is that they will rebel, that they will get older and show the parent, you can't control me. They might end up being more sneaky and pushing back. That is a likely outcome of a child who's been parented by a dictator. Not a guarantee, but a likely outcome. So think of anyone in your life who may have been parented by a dictator. Have you seen if any of their children have done that? Kind of chosen rebellion because they were sick of being controlled. That is dictator parenting. And I want to share with you a story about Dictator Parenting. So I read this story about a dad who is sitting in the airport with his 5-year-old son and his wife, and they're getting ready to go on a flight. Now, this is the 5-year-old's first experience at the airport, first flight. And you could only imagine a 5-year-old boy so excited, looking out the window at the planes, running around, so excited. And the dad, he was a dictator. He demanded obedience. He told that 5-year-old boy, "Stop, sit down right here and fold your arms. Stop running around." And he was very stern with him. Very not age appropriate. He was being very stern, didn't realize this is normal behavior for a 5-year-old boy. So the 5-year-old boy, he sat down and he was immediately obedient. He sat down and he folded his arms right next to his dad. And then when his dad got distracted, what do you think he did? Oftentimes people, when I'm teaching this live, they will say, well, maybe he got up and he ran around again. But he didn't. It's so sad to realize by his actions how he really did feel. As soon as the dad was distracted, he got up, walked around the chairs to the other side where his mom was, and hung on to her arm. He got away from his dad as fast as he could. What do you think that says about their relationship? And if he's trying to get away from his dad at 5 years old, what's that going to look like when he's 15 or 50? How is their relationship? The relationship we have with our kids starts today. We need to pour into that relationship right now. The dad did get that 5-year-old little boy to be obedient. He demanded the obedience and he got it right away, which is easier to do when the kids are younger. But those kids are going to grow up. So it is more important to strengthen our relationship. And yes, be a parent with boundaries and expectations, but not demand obedience and be strict in a way that that child is afraid of you and now doesn't want a relationship with you. So that is dictator parenting, and that's something we want to avoid. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about this extreme style of parenting. This is the pushover parent. Now, the pushover parent is just how it sounds. They maybe don't have a lot of limits and expectations and just, do whatever you want. And they don't have boundaries. And then if they do set a boundary, but the child complains a lot, they end up giving in. That's a pushover parent. And that is also an extreme style of parenting and not helpful in the development of your child. What is the likely outcome of a child who has been parented by a pushover? Unfortunately, they do not learn to own their problems. They're always blaming someone else and pointing the finger at somebody else. It's called responsibility deficit disorder. And though it isn't a true disorder, it's just a term, that's what it means, that they can't take responsibility. They're always passing responsibility onto somebody else, and they can never own their problem, which is an issue. This can not only impact their life as a child, but then again as a teen and even as an adult, and affecting their marriage and their life and their spouse if we cannot learn to own our own problems. So it does impact your child, these pushover parenting. So it's so important that we identify both extremes so that we can avoid them. Now let's talk about where we are striving to be. And that's right here, centered and balanced, the purposeful parent. This type of parent, they do have limits and boundaries. They also have a lot of love and intentional parenting and a good relationship with their kids. That is the likely outcome of a child who has been parented by a purposeful parent. They got disappointed at times, but they were able to deal with their consequences and work through them and still have a strong relationship with their parents. This style of parenting is absolutely the most important that we need to strive for, and avoiding those extremes. In this style of parenting, the child and the parent can compromise. They can talk through different issues because they have a good relationship. The parent can still set boundaries and expectations. That's okay for the parent to lead out. But they also are intentional on building that relationship and showing love to the child every day. It is so important that we strive for this style of parenting. Like I said, it will impact your child's development, and it will impact your relationship, and how they will parent in the future. So no matter where you are on that spectrum, or how you parented yesterday or for the last 100 years, you can start over. You can strive to become a purposeful parent today. And we can let go of those other extremes. Now, let me tell you, if I was not educated about positive parenting, have you seen the color of my hair? I totally have a temper. And I would absolutely be a dictator parent. If I did not know about positive parenting, I would be a dictator parent. But because I have been educated and I know the realities of parenting like that, I have strived to become a purposeful parent. I see the power in it. I know that that is what's important and what's best for me, as well as my child and our relationship that will last forever. So it is worth my time and attention to learn about these different styles of parenting and strive to always be a purposeful parent. Now you may be thinking, oh, my husband, maybe he's more of the dictator and I'm more of the pushover. And if you're thinking of a scenario like that, you're normal. That is what's typically happening in most households. Usually one parent is a dictator and one is a pushover. But by educating yourself on these different parenting styles, you can both work to be on the same page. Instead of being against each other on these extremes, be on the same page and both be purposeful parents and be intentional. And the power in that is huge. It won't only impact your life, but it will impact your child's life and for generations to come. Now, I have to admit, there are times when I can see myself acting in ways that feel more dictator, or parenting in ways like that, or parenting in ways where I'm just exhausted. So an example of this, let's say it's dinner time and your child wants to do something and you're just exhausted. You're just getting dinner ready and you're juggling it all, and they ask for something, and normally maybe you would have a limit or an expectation, but you're kind of a pushover in this moment because you're just trying to survive the day and you're like, yeah, whatever. Okay, so we might have pushover moments. And then let's say now it's time for bed and you are exhausted and you just need those kids in bed. And you can feel your style moving into more of the dictator because you're like, it's bedtime, go to bed now, we're finished. And being more dictator style. And so you can see you can flow throughout this spectrum throughout the day. But the power in understanding them is to realize when you're feeling more one way or the other and kind of catch yourself and say, okay, I need to get more purposeful. I need to talk to them in a better way, in a kinder tone. And I need to take time to hear what they want to say and listen to that instead of just whatever you want. So it's important to identify that spectrum, where we fall on the spectrum, and what's the goal. So when we are leaning one way or another, we can strive to get more balanced and become a purposeful parent, a parent who is intentional, who sets limits and boundaries, but also is intentional in creating awesome experiences for their kids, in pouring on the love and making sure that their needs are met. All right, you've got this. You have been so informed today about the different styles of parenting. And again, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, this is not about feeling guilty. This is about empowering you as a parent to become more purposeful. Now that you have learned the extreme ends of parenting and the extreme styles of parenting and why they're important to avoid, you've got this. You can be a purposeful parent.